tending to keep things mild, and it will be a drizzly start to the day for northwest Scotland, and there'll be showers around first thing for parts of Kent as well. 1 or 2 showers running along the south coast. With the cloud in the south, a milder start to the day, but for Wales, the Midlands, northern England, parts of Northern Ireland, some dense pockets of fog about. Likewise for central and southern Scotland. But further north into northwest Scotland, well, it's going to be a milder start to the day because of the cloud and those outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle. The light rain pushing into parts of Northern Ireland through the morning as well, and this area of cloud in the far northwest will tend to sink southwards slowly, and it will also turn cloudier through parts of northern England, the Midlands and North Wales. Brighter skies to the south and southeast, a drier day to come for southeast England, and feeling pleasant enough, 11 to 12 Celsius. But into Thursday, we're going to see a cloudier start to the day. Still some pockets of fog about, not as much as previous mornings, however. And it's going to be a mainly cloudy day, I think, with some light showers affecting northwestern parts. Into Friday, a change is on the way, but it takes a good 24 to 36 hours to make its way across the country. That change to much colder weather through the weekend.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's only 2 weeks remaining to win Christmas on Us this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents, with a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. You'll get it all in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight. After pressure was piled onto the Archbishop of Canterbury, forcing him to resign amidst the scandal of serial abuser John Smith, he has succumbed and handed in his resignation to the King. Meanwhile, the Reverend Starmer, the only Western leader to attend COP29 of any seriousness, has boldly declared
a 2035 NDC target to reduce all greenhouse gas emissions by at least 81% on 1990 levels.
Gosh, he's such an orator. Could Starmer's surrender of the Chagos Islands to the ally of Communist China, Mauritius, be humiliatingly vetoed by one of Donald Trump's new appointments? Plus, the sheer impact of mass migration to the UK is on full display as new demographic statistics reveal a third of babies born in this country are born to overseas mothers. But what does this mean for the makeup of the UK? State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most pugnacious panel, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the journalist and author, Michael Crick. As ever, it's a crucial part of the programme. Let me know your views, mailmog@gbnews.com. But now, it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Sophie Reaper.
Good evening. The time is just after 8 o'clock and these are your latest headlines. A spokesperson for the Prime Minister has said that Sir Keir respects the decision of the Archbishop of Canterbury to resign. Justin Welby stepped down earlier this afternoon following a damning report into a prolific child abuser associated with the Church of England. The report concluded that Welby had failed to act after learning about the abuse by John Smythe QC in 2013. The Prime Minister has pledged an 81% cut to UK emissions by 2035. That was at the UN Climate Summit in Azerbaijan. Sir Keir Starmer says there is what he called a huge opportunity for the UK to lead the world in the economy of tomorrow, which he said would mean better jobs and economic growth for the UK. Here's what the PM had to say earlier on today.
Let me be clear. There is no national security. There is no economic security. There is no global security without climate security. And this is a huge opportunity for investment, for UK businesses, for British workers, if we act now to lead the world in the economy of tomorrow.
A rally hosted by the Friends of the British Overseas Territories took place in London earlier this evening. Dubbed Chagos Islands Call to Action, the event aimed to bring together supporters who would unite different communities against the handover of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. One attendee told GB News that the British government has thus far refused to listen.
The government has shown sign over the years that they are not even willing to talk to the Chagosians, to communicate with the Chagosians. And on the issues of sovereignty, they have to consult the Chagosian. It's a must. It's not an ask. It's not an opinion. It's international law.
Terminally ill adults who are expected to die within 6 months would be able to request assistance to end their own life under the proposed end-of-life bill. But someone with a disability or mental health issue would not be eligible. The controversial bill has raised some concerns that people could feel pressured into ending their lives prematurely. MPs will have the chance to vote on this on the 29th of November. Queen Camilla has returned to public duties today after her chest infection. The Queen is attending the Booker Prize reception at Clarence House this evening, telling people there that she's, quote, getting much better and is on the mend. Last week, she was forced to withdraw from her duties and missed the weekend's Remembrance Day commemoration events. For now, those are your latest GB News headlines. I'm Sophie Reaper. More from me in the next hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. And normally, as a Catholic, a fully fledged papist, I wouldn't comment on matters relating to the Church of England, seeing as it's essentially none of my business. However, I am my viewers' obedient servant and believe this matter is of interest to them. Furthermore, I happen to believe, perhaps unusually, that the resignation of the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, is regrettable. The Archbishop may not be a saint, God will determine that at a later date. However, he is a man of profound faith and devotion to the work of God. Despite the pressure, rather suspiciously, from a number of bishops who ought to remember that ambition for office is a sin within the Church, I believe this case is not as clear-cut as many would have you believe. The Archbishop was only made aware of John Smith's abuse in 2013, but was led to believe the police had been notified and were handling the case. Perhaps he should have been closer to the process, but that's easy to judge with hindsight. Furthermore, the recent Makin report claims Welby was, quote, unlikely to have only been made aware of abuses in 2013, citing the fact that he'd been warned about him. But unlikely is very unfair. It's not a judicial standard. It's not beyond reasonable doubt. It's not even balance of probability. But the quality of the warning appears to have been non-specific, of the kind that people with axes to grind make. This man isn't a very good chap. And it was made years before anyone knew about widespread clerical abuse. Information that in 2024 means someone must have known is not the same as stories told in the 1980s, before anyone is aware of this terrible scandal that has affected so many institutions, including, of course, my own church, the Catholic Church. Indeed, Welby has been known for being extremely tough on the other abuse cases, which would further imply his innocence in the case of John Smith. None of this takes away from the horror of the crimes, which are so wicked and so horrible that people used churches to cover them up, and shame falls upon the institutions in which it took place. But on the technical and administrative question of the Archbishop's role, it seems to me we've seen mob rule, led by members of the Church, including a bishop. Anyone, especially the Bishop of Newcastle, Dr. Helen Ann Hartley, who called for the Archbishop to resign, ought to be automatically excluded from consideration as his replacement as Archbishop of Canterbury. There is, sadly, a long history of bishops not backing their hierarchy, all the way back to St Anselm. St Anselm, fascinatingly, the barons supported him, but the bishops didn't, and St Thomas Becket. I fear we may just have witnessed a repeat of this historic trend. As ever, let me know your views, mailmog@gbnews.com. But I'm joined now by Graham Nicholls, Director of Affinity Gospel Church. Mr. Nicholls, thank you very much for joining me. Isn't the Archbishop being judged with hindsight? And he couldn't possibly have known these things, particularly when he was first told Smith was not a very nice man.
I think there is perhaps a lack of natural justice in that he may feel aggrieved about it. So I agree with your general point that it's much easier to judge with hindsight and to apply different standards. But I think in the end, there was an institutional failure, and he is the head of that institution. I personally didn't call for his resignation. Just in the interviews in the last 24 hours, I've been saying I think it's inevitable that he will have to, because there's such a head of steam in terms of his own church and in terms of the media furore around it, that I think it was inevitable he had to. It's a different question as to whether it was entirely just, but he is the head of that institution, and to some degree he had knowledge about 11 years ago. And I think more importantly now, the question is this a good time for the church to reflect on what is its mission? What is it all about? Is it about politicking? Is it about the kind of infighting between the various bishops and different factions? Or are they going to get back to the essential teaching of the Bible, telling people about Jesus, died, risen, reigning, coming again, all those kind of things? That's what I want the church to focus on. Of course, they need to be...
I'm certainly in favour of churches talking about God. It seems to be fundamental. But this Bishop of Newcastle seems to be rather lacking in Christian charity, doesn't she? Having a pop at the Archbishop straight away. You would have thought the bishops would have been a little bit more sympathetic to the difficulty good holy men face in running institutions that have people in them who are sinful.
Well, I don't know the motivations of that particular bishop. I think she would not perhaps be on the evangelical Bible-believing wing, and there may well have been some jostling for position going on. That always happens. But in the end, those things only carry if there is some weight to them. And I think there was some weight to the accusation. So it may have been or uncharitable of her, but in the end, it was a genuine point she was making, that he was aware of something 11 years or so ago, didn't move very far, didn't move very fast. And there was just a degree of complacency last week in the way he was doing interviews about it, which I think was perhaps unkind, thoughtless towards those who had survived that terrible abuse.
All right, well, thank you very much, Graham, for joining me briefly this evening, much appreciated. So I'm now joined by my panel, my most pugnacious panel, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the journalist and author, Michael Crick. Michael, it's very easy to say 11 years ago he should have known more and inquired more, but what I've read in the papers is that he was told it had been reported to the police. And surely that is the natural place for these allegations to go, and it would be unusual to follow up a police investigation.
No, I think if he was told it had been reported to the police, he should. His natural next question should be, right, who in the church knew? Who in the church knew? Who in the church might have aided Mr. Smith in these activities? After all, appalling allegations have been going on in your church for decades, all over the world, Australia, America, Ireland, this country, and surely a churchman like Welby would be saying to himself, crikey, I hope we're not in the right mess that the Catholics have been in, and, you know, and looking at, has there been an appalling cover-up, as indeed there was in your church, in all of those places, and a pattern of cover-up. And the first thing Welby should have said, OK, leave it to the police to investigate him, and he should have checked that they were doing a proper investigation, and then he should have said, right, who in the church, who, for instance, was involved in the church with these summer camps that Smith did, which actually Welby at one point was involved in the same summer camp movement, but denied ever meeting Smith. But there is all sorts he could have done to pursue this, instead of which he got on with all his other things. Well, I think, given what happened in your church, the alarm bells should have rung.
But that's the point, with all the other things he had to do.
Yes, but this is pretty serious stuff.
He's told something's with the police. The normal pattern would be for a police inquiry to be completed and then for the church to do things. With all these inquiries...
It's a bit slow, isn't it? We all know that police inquiries take a long time. Sometimes they fizzle out.
Absolutely right. But this is the pattern of inquiries, is that the police are always allowed to go first because it seemed to be interfering potentially with their inquiries if you carry out one at the same point.
Nonetheless, you should be inquiring. What did people around me know, and when did they know it? You should be a bit more active than just saying, OK, well, we'll leave it to the police. And, you know, I mean, whatever happened to the police inquiry?
Well, I think the police inquiry turned out that the Archbishop was essentially misled.
Well, there wasn't one.
That somebody mentioned it to a policeman and nothing went further than that.
There are two important things. When he said last week, I've been thinking about going, and actually I've decided I'm not going, he was done for from that moment. I mean, what a ridiculous thing to say. He should have come straight out. He said, I read the report, and basically it said I was, quotes, incurious, right, from 2013 onwards to his death. In those 4 years, he was beating the hell out of young men in Africa. Yeah. So there are other crimes going on. You only had to have listened to the Today programme and listened to a victim, an intelligent victim, on the years of abuse he got at Winchester College, by the way. So it's not. So it's towards your end of the schooling area, right? You only have to listen to that to know that he had to go. And I am sure that when he had drafted that last night, but I'm sure when he heard that, he posted it.
But
he had
Smith
to go.
was clearly a disgusting criminal man.
This was over 5 decades within the church.
But had the Archbishop known, he would have done more about it. I think the idea...
Well, OK, let me just ask you this. Let me just ask you this. Right, we say we're all reasonably knowledgeable about the world, right? I agree, in the 1980s, there was a lot of, quotes, bad people, like Jimmy Savile, right? And nothing happened, although I do notice that he said, actually Welby said, after the Savile episode, he said that institutions and the heads of institutions, i.e. the BBC, they should go. So he had this to his account as well. There was no way that he could stay. He knew that.
He should have resigned. He should have resigned straight away, as you say.
Directly got the report.
It's ridiculous that he's dragging it out.
He can't be held responsible. When you say the heads of institutions should be held responsible, Surely the head of the institution in 1981 was Runcie. It wasn't Welby, and that you're trying to hold people responsible for things that happened when they were still young
presume
men.
if Runcie had known, or any of them had known, then they should...
But they would have stopped it.
They would have acted, and he did not act. Either he was misled, because that's the next story that's going to come out, because he is not going to be the only person at the top of that pyramid at Lambeth Palace who thought or knew what was going on there. So it may be that a whole sweep of them have to go, and I think most of the activists on this particular issue are saying the same. But it's a good thing he's gone, and for other people who run. After all, they are men of the cloth, you know. We're not talking about Rupert Murdoch and phone hacking, right? Does he have to go? No, we're not saying that. What we're saying is you're supposed to be caring for us all out there. We're supposed to be all your people. We are your flock. And instead of that, this guy was beating the hell out of hundreds and hundreds of teenage kids.
But there's no question that the Archbishop would have been thoroughly against and would have recognised that as being evil.
Right. So explain his incuriosity then. Tell me this, when he knows, taking your point, that there is all this abuse that appears to go on in massive ways within churches all over the world.
But
Why is it he did nothing?
Because I don't think that's what he was being told.
I'll tell you why he did nothing, because he knew. Immediately I show some interest in that, I'm back in the 80s, and then I'm back in trouble.
I just don't think there's any evidence for that at all. That people didn't know how bad this man was at the time. And we look back with hindsight, and we now know what an evil man he was. And we assume that the Archbishop must have
that guy on the Today programme. That guy on the Today programme, he actually said, "I sent letters." So this was a kid of aged about 20 when he finally said, "I cannot take any more of this," right? Because he was being beaten to get the sins out of him. This was the explanation. "I can't take any more of this," right? And he wrote notes. He wrote letters, right? Who did those letters go to, right? Let's accept. They didn't go to Welby.
They didn't go to the Archbishop, that's right.
But they've gone to senior people. Where are they? I'd like to see them come forward. I'd like to see them sit here with you and you cross-question them.
All right. Well, we'll see if that can be arranged. Thank you as always to my panel. After the break, Sir Keir Starmer has promised yet another carbon target at COP29. But do you believe him when he says people won't have to change their lifestyles to achieve it?
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Millions are struggling to stay warm with the wet weather, the cost of living and, of course, cuts to fuel payments.
Yes, winter is fast approaching, so it's crucial to find cost-effective ways to save on your energy expenses whilst staying reasonably warm.
So joining us to provide advice on heating your home, or at least staying warm somehow, is one of the leading voices on lowering energy bills, Nick Miles. And you are very welcome in here this morning. I mean, a lot of people would say, well, in the olden days, you just used to put on an extra jumper. But actually, it's more serious than that, isn't it? What is the best way, the most cost-effective way, to keep your home warm?
Some of the bigger things is we need to do more things on insulating our properties, but actually sometimes, it can be simple things like turning down a thermostat. Those that have got the luxury of being able to afford energy bills and keep their homes on the thermostat a bit too high. If you just turn it down by one simple degree, as long as you keep it between 18 and 22 degrees, can save up to 5 to 10% of your energy bill. So that's a kind of a very simple way of doing things. But, it can be other little tips and tricks you can do as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I always get it when people say about this, but like 18 degrees is not warm for a house.
No, and it's twofold actually. It's that kind of relative temperature, but also it's the kind of drafts and things you have in your house. So it's the comfort factor. So what we have a lot of old properties in our country. You've got some 8 million hard-to-treat properties built before World War II that have got poor insulation, but also very, very drafty. So it's the temperature and it's the kind of the draftiness of them that kind of keeps us uncomfortable.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we were talking about the Archbishop of Canterbury. And Tony says, Jacob, Welby may be a case of Hanlon's razor. That's a new one to me, actually. Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. It helps avoid unnecessary conflicts and misunderstandings when evaluating human behaviour. And Sasha says, a kind message from Sasha, I usually agree with you. However, on this matter, I completely disagree with you. Any decent person would have ensured that he had no access to any child ever again. The Archbishop is responsible. And Mike says, Justin Welby has mistakenly focused far too much on politics rather than spirituality. It seems ironic that he has been brought down by the political manoeuvres of his own colleagues. He will not be missed. Sir Keir Starmer is the only major Western leader to attend the 29th Conference of the Parties, COP, in Azerbaijan, and he made this bold announcement today.
I was pleased to announce that we're building on our reputation as a climate leader, with the UK's 2035 NDC target to reduce all greenhouse gas emissions by at least 81% on 1990 levels.
Well, at least he didn't promise to reduce sausages on this occasion. Meanwhile, the president of Azerbaijan himself had a different view, reportedly hailing oil, gas and other natural resources as a gift of the god. I wonder if there were a way we could swap the Reverend Starmer with his Azeri counterpart whilst he's out there. But joking aside, I'm joined now by the founder of E3G, the climate think tank Tom Burke, to discuss the newly announced climate target. Tom, thank you as always for coming in. Nobody else seems to be doing it. So we seem to be setting this very ambitious target, but America's not now going to do it. China isn't doing it. India isn't doing it. Why are we making ourselves cold and poor when the rest of the world isn't taking it?
Well, we aren't making ourselves cold and poor. If anything, we'll make ourselves a lot warmer if we do the right thing. So I'm not worried about...
We'll get a lot warmer if the temperature goes up.
Well, I was going to say, we are definitely going to get warmer if we don't solve this problem. And also, lots of other countries are doing things. It's not... I mean, Mr. Trump is not going to do things. That's absolutely clear. He's been very clear about that. If we want to let him run the world, we'll live with the consequences. It certainly is, and we'll live with the consequences.
The defence blanket for Europe. Trump is a serious
I'm deeply in favour of keeping America connected to Europe. I think you're absolutely right. We'd be in a lot of trouble if we didn't. Therefore, I worry a bit about us actually falling out with America because he's completely wrong on climate change.
But the American economy has been growing as it has fracked and has had cheap sources of energy. The European economies over the last 15 years have been stagnant.
Well, the American economy has been growing because Biden introduced the IRA, which actually produced an enormous amount of investment in actually something that's been missing in America and here, which is in manufacturing, which creates jobs and wealth and all the rest of it. So it's absolutely right. The American economy is
recent. Actually, it started growing because of Trump's tax cuts in 2017, which gave an enormous boost to corporate America. And the exploitation...
It gave an enormous boost to those people in corporate America, the tech bros,
that's right, who employed people. Cutting corporation tax is
and what
very
it actually
good.
did, was massive. Fracking didn't do anything in America.
Fracking's done an amazing amount. It's made America a net export of energy for the first time in decades.
Yes. That's true.
Incredibly powerful for the American economy.
So you think we should do the same?
Oh, definitely we should frack.
We should frack here?
But as you know, America's emissions have been reduced mainly because of fracking, because it's lower emissions than other sources of energy.
No, Jacob. No.
Let's
not
go.
true. What you're saying is not...
It is true.
Not true.
Natural gas is relatively low emissions compared to other fossil fuels.
So compared to what America... Yeah, but it's quite...
But that's how they've lowered their emissions.
Don't be
so
tricky.
That is factually true.
No. Well, you're cherry-picking the facts, however.
Oh, but you now accept that what I said was in fact true.
Well, yeah. If you pick cherries, then you're always going to have something nice to eat.
Let me ask something about what Starmer said about how we could do this without changing living standards. We've got a clip. Can we go to the clip, please?
What we're not going to do is start telling people how to live their lives. We're not going to start dictating to people what they do. It is an ambitious target, it's a realisable target, but it's not going to be one in which we tell people how to live their lives.
Particular circle, you get a reduction of 81% without telling people what to do.
Well, we've managed to grow our economy enormously while we've reduced our emissions up until now.
Actually, up until about 2008, the economy has grown at subnormal levels since the global financial crisis.
I'm rather inclined to say you're responsible for the economy growing at subnormal levels. So
it's more expensive energy, which the Climate Change Act...
Come on, there's quite a lot of other reasons why the economy has not grown as well as it could have done.
The greatest single driver of growth is cheap energy.
Well, it's a driver of growth.
It's a major driver of growth.
Well, again...
OK.
So you say...
But can you do it without telling people what to do? Because they're being told...
Of course you can. Why would you have to tell people what to do to improve the efficiency of their houses? Why would you do that? They'll get their bills down.
We're telling people that they've got to have heat pumps, which are enormously expensive. We're telling people that they've got to buy electric cars when they like having petrol cars.
Some people are telling you to do that. That's true. Some people are saying that's what you... No, you're reading the wrong newspapers again, Jacob.
On petrol cars, the state is taxing car manufacturers for selling too many petrol cars.
The state is doing what the state is allowed to do.
But he's just said he's not going to tell people what to do.
No, he's not telling people.
He's telling people what to do.
Well, that's like saying if I give people a tax break, I'm telling them what to do. I'm telling them to spend money. That's silly.
If you ban petrol cars, you are telling people they cannot buy a new petrol car. They plan to ban them in 2035.
Well, they have said they might ban them in 2035.
They said they will. The law is in place.
Well, we'll see.
But it is in place.
That's great.
Is he promising to repeal that law?
No, but hang on. Why would you worry about banning things that are bad for you? Why would anybody worry about things? We ban a whole lot of things that are very bad for us.
I don't think petrol cars are bad for you. But the Prime Minister has said he's not going to tell people what to do. You're now saying he's going to ban things that he thinks are bad for people.
No, if you're advocating... If you are actually saying that what we really have to have are political leaders who don't tell anybody about what's right and what's wrong, then...
But that's just what he said. I'm merely asking you about what Starmer said.
Take that up with him. Don't take it up with me.
But is he saying something that's not true in your opinion? Do we have to ban people from doing things?
In my opinion, we have to do what government always does, which is decide what things are in all of our interest and make sure that we don't do things that undermine all of our interest. And that's exactly what will happen.
So Starmer isn't telling the truth? What I'm asking you is to achieve the target of 81% reduction by 2035, do people have to be told what to do?
Will we have to pass laws that will help us get there? Will we have to use...
Which will stop people doing things they want to do?
Will we have to use regulation? Yes, as we do in many, many other areas of life. In order to stop people doing things that are not in their interest, we will have to use regulation.
Well, there we go.
Of course we will.
Thank you very much, Tom. The Reverend Starmer seems to have been telling us something that isn't true. After the break, could the Reverend Starmer once again surrender of the Chagos Islands be humiliatingly vetoed by one of Donald Trump's new foreign policy appointments? Find out after these messages.
Hello again and welcome along to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Staying fine for most of us during the next 24 hours, but it will be chilly overnight and again we'll see some frost and fog form under this area of high pressure. The high this time contains clearer skies compared with last week's high pressure, which was predominantly gloomy. That means, of course, temperatures will fall away overnight quite quickly. So frost and fog pockets forming, especially across parts of Wales, the Midlands, Northern England, Northern Ireland. At either side of that, we're going to see cloud in the south and the far northwest. tending to keep things mild, and it will be a drizzly start to the day for northwest Scotland. And there'll be showers around first thing for parts of Kent as well. 1 or 2 showers running along the south coast. With the cloud in the south, a milder start to the day. But for Wales, the Midlands, northern England, parts of Northern Ireland, some dense pockets of fog about. Likewise for central and southern Scotland. But further north into northwest Scotland, well, it's going to be a milder start to the day because of the cloud and those outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle. The light rain pushing into parts of Northern Ireland through the morning as well, and this area of cloud in the far northwest will tend to sink southwards slowly, and it will also turn cloudier through parts of northern England, the Midlands and North Wales. Brighter skies to the south and southeast, a drier day to come for southeast England, and feeling pleasant enough, 11 to 12 Celsius. But into Thursday, we're going to see a cloudier start to the day, still some pockets of fog about, not as much as previous mornings, however. And it's going to be a mainly cloudy day, I think, with some light showers affecting northwestern parts. Into Friday, a change is on the way, but it takes a good 24 to 36 hours to make its way across the country. That change to much colder weather through the weekend.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back. We were debating COP29 and your views have come in. Graham says, given the vast amount of money involved and the implications on our lives and freedoms, shouldn't the net zero misery goals be put to a referendum, or are they afraid of the result? Well, in my view, people will eventually vote against this nonsense. And Mary says, the sad truth is that it's entirely predictable that Starmer would go to a pointless COP conference and then try to be impressive by announcing moronic green targets, which will cripple this country. All the main players stayed away, unsurprisingly. How does Starmer always manage to be out of step? So, President-elect Donald Trump has appointed his new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, or announced at any rate, and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. And the latter may pose a problem for the Reverend Starmer's surrendering of the Chagos Islands to the ally of Communist China, Mauritius. Mike Waltz has been one of the leading critics of the Chagos Islands deal, previously claiming that the move would undoubtedly strengthen the Chinese communists in the region. So could this be the good news we want? That Trump will intervene to stop a bad deal? Well, my pugnacious panel is here, Kelvin McKenzie and Michael Crick. Kelvin, this could save Britain from a humiliating retreat and surrender to the communist Chinese.
Well, anything that does that has clearly got my tick. But what I like about this is the position that Trump is going to be taking in relation to us generally. So Brexit is now going to turn out to be a tremendous asset. Because what is he going to say? He's going to say, I like those little guys. I've always rather liked the UK. I've got a little few investments in there. I'm going to give them a trade bounce. I'm going to do some kind of trade deal with them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to impose 20% trade tariffs on the EU, who I don't like. And where is our old friend Starmer going to be on that? At one stage, he'll be smiling, thank you so much, and the other realising that he is going to be dancing to Trump's tune for the next 4 years. This is going to be the greatest thing I have ever seen, watching socialists having to deal with somebody of the right and having to bow at the knee to them, as they have done to the BLM.
And Chagos got a bit more complicated, hasn't it, because of the Mauritius election, where I understand the opposition have swept the board and don't approve of the lease back anyway. So you've got Mauritius, who now isn't so keen on the deal, and a Trump administration that probably doesn't like it. it may be that we keep it.
Good. And Britain should never have done the deal. And Britain should be, and one would hope a Labour government, would hope any government, your government, should have done much more to redress the appalling injustice that was done to the Chagossians way back in the 1960s by the Wilson Labour government of deporting Chagossians to Mauritius and the Seychelles. I mean, almost as if we were still in the days of slavery. And of course, some of the Chagossians were the descendants of slaves. And that, whatever deal was done, should have been done with the involvement of the Chagossians, who are now dispersed to those two countries, and quite a lot of them in Crawley, believe it or not, in Sussex. So maybe this is the opportunity, actually, to allow some of them, well, all of them, if they want to go back.
So you would argue that there was an historic wrong which should be righted in a different way, not by giving Chagos to Mauritius, but by giving it back to the Chagossians, or at least giving them, well, some recompense.
I'm not an expert on I've never been there, I've never been anywhere near there, let's be honest about it, but I've learned enough about it over the years to realise a terrible injustice was done, and that if we did this deal with Mauritius, we should have involved the Chagossians, and they were not consulted at all.
And do you agree with Kelvin's point on Trump, that actually this is going to be really interesting for Starmer, because Trump quite likes the UK, but he doesn't like socialism? I mean, it's almost like some riddle.
Well, I agree that it is going to be, good theatre, but there is also very important politics at stake here, more important politics than we've had for a very long time. And not just to do with Brexit and trade, but to do with Ukraine and all of these things. And the assessment of how it embarrasses Labour should not be our prime consideration.
But no, what I was going on to say was that the great achievement, perhaps Tony Blair's single greatest achievement, was that he managed to get on with two American presidents, because our relationship with the US is fundamental. And if Starmer can get on with Trump, that's actually good for global security. It's not just good for the UK.
Can I just say to you, that is not possible. You cannot be a dull, line-by-line kind of politician who, by the way, doesn't have any strong views. After all, he was Remain. Oh, no, he's not. I am pro-Corbyn. Oh, no, I'm not. No, he is a total mountebank, that guy. Right. You can look that one up.
It's a great word, mountebank.
Yeah, mountebank. Hasn't been used on GBNews.
We will use it more often.
Yeah, we'll use it more.
I thought the lawyers told us not to say certain things tonight.
Mountebank is not one.
Mountebank. No, so they will not get on. When you see, why does Farage get on with Trump? Mainly because he agrees with him, but secondly, he's got an outward personality. He enjoys a beer. He likes to get on with life, right? Despite what stuff, there will come a moment, a kind of Harold Wilson Vietnam moment, right, in which he turns. And when that moment happens, by the way, the 20% tariffs come on and the whole world starts to change as far as we're concerned. I can see nothing but disaster heading towards Starmer. I can't wait for it to happen, frankly.
Well, I think it will be much more complicated than that, though I'm sure that Trump won't like dealing with a former prosecutor either, given all the problems he's had with prosecutors. Yeah. No, it's going to be complicated issue by issue. Starmer will go to Washington. I don't think the special relation. I shouldn't use that phrase. I've banned myself from using it. So why do you? I don't think it'll be as bad as it was in the days of Heath and Nixon and as Kelvin says, Johnson and Wilson. But you can't see a great formula there. But when Bush Jr. came in, everybody thought it wasn't going to work, and the relationship was stronger with Bush Jr. almost than it was with
Clinton.
But
isn't this Kelvin's point?
Yeah.
That Starmer isn't as adept as Blair.
No.
Blair was very clever to be able to get on with Bush Jr.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And Starmer lacks so many of the necessary skills to be a good leader, I'm afraid.
Oh dear. Even Michael Craig thinks that.
I've been saying that for a while.
Assisted dying bill was published yesterday, and it revealed terminally ill people would be able to take their lives within 3 weeks upon the approval of 2 doctors and consideration from a judge. The press conference today, held by Labour MP Kim Ledbetter, was of a very establishment hue. And this is important because some of our minority communities are more socially conservative and maybe more sceptical of legalising state-sanctioned killing. Well, I'm joined now by Navid Ashgar, the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Muslim Forum. Navid, thank you very much for joining me. Now, the Lord Chancellor, as a Muslim, has said that she cannot support assisted dying. Would you say that this is the view of most Muslims in the United Kingdom?
I would say that is pretty much the view of every Muslim. It is part of the religion. It is one of the tenets of Islam. And the verses of the Quran says, "Do not kill yourselves, for verily God has been to you the most merciful." Another verse says, "When their time has come, they cannot delay it for a single hour, nor can they bring it forward by a single hour." And it's considered a crime punishable not only in this world, but in the hereafter. You will go straight to hell. It is written, there is no heaven for anybody who tries to take their own life or anybody who assists anybody to take their own life.
And I mean, what the other side of the argument would say is that people are in terrible pain, their life is about to end anyway, and they're not really taking life, they are just fast-forwarding the end of life slightly and easing pain. What would your response to that be?
We all have experience of that with close friends, family, loved ones. I had a friend who I spoke to just today who said her mother was given 2 weeks to live and she's now still alive after 4 years. So who is a doctor to say that you have X amount of time to live, and because you only have a week or 2 weeks, we might decide to, put you out your misery? That person could go on to live. It might not be the greatest of life, but they can still go on to live a life. The safeguards are just not in place, no matter how many safeguards the government is saying they're going to put in place. There's things from Belgium, the Netherlands, from the USA, where safeguards were put in place, and slowly, more and more eligibility is now appearing. And as time goes on, it becomes more acceptable. And we already have such a high rate of male suicide in this country in the first place. Will it become normalised in 10, 15, 20 years' time, with the children who are now being born and another generation? They will think, well, this is a normal part of life, which isn't.
Don't you think
not a normal part of life.
There are two important safeguards? One is that people who are coercing could get 14 years in prison for coercing somebody to commit suicide, and that a judge will be involved who will have to speak to one of the doctors involved, and that therefore these are higher safeguards than some of the other countries have seen.
How difficult would it be to actually prosecute a loved one, a son, a daughter, a husband, who may have an ulterior motive or may not have an ulterior motive? How difficult would it be for somebody to decide that that person who's probably on medicines, on medication, probably on ventilators or all sorts of, mechanical aids, how would they be able to testify that they're being pressurised? It would be a very difficult situation, and I can assure that the prosecution rate would be very minimal on that.
And also worth pointing out that our courts are overwhelmed and have an enormous backlog, so I don't know where we're suddenly finding all these judges from.
Jacob, think of this. Our courts are so backlogged with standard everyday situations that, in my opinion, a judge would take the opinion of the two doctors and sign it off, because a judge is not medically trained, so he will take the opinion of those two doctors. In my opinion, it would almost go to the High Court for a rubber stamping, and that is a dangerous precedent.
And people can't get an appointment to see a GP within 2 or 3 weeks, so how are they going to see 2 GPs immediately to get signed off and be killed? I mean, it seems absolutely ridiculous.
All within 14 days. I mean, how much resources do we put onto this?
So you don't have resources to look after people who may get better. You devote lots of resources to killing people. It seems absolutely ridiculous.
For example, even in Oregon, I was just reading some of the figures. In 2023, 367 people died under the law. That's 5 times more than a decade ago. And now people living outside the state are also allowed to come into the state for this service. So here we go. There's the safeguards getting slowly changed. In the Netherlands, for example, legalised cases including suffering from accumulation of old age disorders, sight, hearing loss, osteoporosis, cognitive decline. In Belgium now, the law allows the terminally ill children of any age to be euthanized, and 10% of children in Belgium who die before their first birthday die as a result of euthanasia. So
well, Belgium's even worse than that. A mother who killed her children was able to kill herself, so you effectively have executions back in Belgium. It is a terrible system. But thank you very much, Naveed. The Catholics and Muslims will stand together on this. After the break, I'll be speaking with the UK's foremost demographer about the rapid change in the makeup of the UK as it emerges a third of babies are born to foreign mothers.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Maria, potholes, the bane of everybody that uses the road, whether you're a car driver or a cyclist. As a cyclist, are even worse. How how have we got into this situation where our roads are in such a bad state?
Well, part of it is to do with actually our climate. In somewhere like, say, Sweden, like the snow will fall on the ground, it will stay there for months. Whereas here we've got what's called a freeze-thaw climate, where the water comes down, then we might have a cold snap and it freezes, and the water within the pothole will then expand and make the pothole bigger. Then we might have a mild spell, and then that process repeats. So, you know, we do actually need extra funding to acknowledge the fact that, you know, we just live in a climate where we're sort of particularly vulnerable to potholes.
Why? I mean, you know, the fact that this happens, these weather conditions happen, is no great surprise to anybody. Why has the problem been ignored for so long?
I think what's happened is we've had like short-term funding. So it's like, oh, there's a pothole, let's patch it up. Oh, there's another one, let's patch it up. But the patches aren't actually really that strong, so then they break down again. So, you know, really what we need is to have roads completely resurfaced, and then they'll just be pothole-free for a very long time. And that really is how funding should be. That's the direction funding should go in, as opposed to just sort of like dribs and drabs here and there.
Do you think this government are going to be good for the motorist, or is there indeed a war on the motorist still?
The different parties come in and they've all got different policies that they wheel out, then they cancel the policies, and then there's so much lack of transparency. Like, for example, with the pothole issue, sometimes the government, whichever government is in office, will do some big showboating about how they're going to give X amount of potholes, and you still think that sounds really good.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan Tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Well, we're talking about Chagos and euthanasia, and we've had a couple of mail mogs. Mike says, Jacob, I have been a family doctor for over 30 years. Assisted dying must be allowed with very tight restrictions. There should be at least 3 doctors and a layperson on a panel to support or deny the validity of the request. And David, thank you for this, David. I love it when the 3 wise men are on. Well, that's my most pugnacious panel for you. Perhaps one of the most startling recent statistics that illustrates the sheer scale of mass migration over the past 20 years is that 1/3 of babies born in the UK are born to foreign mothers. Now, with an effective integration policy, perhaps this wouldn't be too much of a problem. After all, my late father was born to a foreign mother, but unfortunately, here in the UK, we haven't had one. So what does this mean for the future of the demographic makeup of the UK, especially as our national birth rate continues to decline, while many immigrant groups tend to have more children than average? Well, there are few better people to ask this question to than the UK's foremost demographer, author of No One Left, Why the World Needs More Children, Dr. Paul Morland. Paul, thank you very much for coming in. Good evening. What is the scale of the problem that 1 in 3 babies born to mothers who've come from outside the country, are they by and large naturalised British citizens? Are they people who are passing through? What's actually happening?
Well, let's call it the scale of the issue to start with, and then we can perhaps maybe come on to see whether it's a problem. The foreign-born population of this country is about 16%, dramatically higher than it has been historically and growing rapidly. The percentage of babies born to foreign mothers is about getting on for 1/3, and if you look at both foreign parents, slightly less, but not much. So why is that discrepancy there? Well, there are 2 reasons. First of all, the percentage of women of childbearing age who are overseas born is much bigger. Our older populations are much more ethnically white British and born in Britain. As you go down to the younger groups, particularly the age of childbearing women, it's a much bigger than the average 16% across the whole scale. The second thing is they do have larger families, and they're not dramatically larger. There's perhaps 2/3 of a child difference, we do have that data, between British-born and non-British-born women. There is some data, it's not great, that some of our ethnic communities have a lower than average fertility rate. Hindus, Muslims, possibly black Afro-Caribbeans as well. Certain groups have a higher fertility rate, but immigrants as a whole, who are now disproportionately from India and Pakistan, fewer from Europe, do have a higher fertility rate, at least in the first generation. So what that is building into the future is even if we stopped immigration now, we will have a growing share of people whose origins are not in this country.
And is this a problem? Is this culturally a problem for the unity of the nation? Or are communities slowly integrating, perhaps not in the first and second generations, but in the third, fourth and subsequent generations?
Well, something like integration is very hard to measure. It's a rather subjective thing. I mean, I am the child of a foreign-born mother. And when I was born, 60 years ago on Friday...
Happy birthday,
Thank you very much. Children of foreign-born mothers were a tiny percentage. And when my parents came to this country, they were told this is the greatest country on the earth. You're free to live your own life, but fit in and be appreciative. In that environment where you have a small immigrant cohort and where the surrounding culture, which is numerically overwhelming, is proud of itself, aware of its heritage, knows where it comes from, and says to those arriving, be part of us, join us, and be proud. It's all doable. When it becomes numerically much greater and the country's having an identity crisis, it doesn't work.
And that's the problem, is the identity crisis, that we have so many people going around saying this isn't a great country, we should be ashamed of our history, we've done terrible things. And this creates an uncertainty amongst people who've just come to this country thinking, like Dick Whittington, that they're coming to a place where the streets are paved with gold, because otherwise why on earth have they come here?
I think it is numbers as well. I think when you've got such large foreign-born communities, people are able to live in a bubble, in an ethnic bubble, in a linguistic bubble, in a religious bubble, and really have very little contact with the wider society. So even without that identity issue we have, even without all the woke ideology, what's going on in our schools, etc., even without that, I think the numbers we have now make it very hard for immigrant groups to integrate.
And what do you think can be done about it? Do you think that restricting immigration now could help the numbers who are already here integrate and would stop the issue developing, or is it too late?
I don't think it's too late. It's never too late. I think it's urgent to stop the mass immigration. I think the other thing, and this is really important, and I take every opportunity to say it, if we do stop immigration, we are going to have terrible labour shortages. And the way around that is now to start addressing seriously the fact that we have too few children. Many communities in this country have too few children, including the still predominant white British. Now, Keir Starmer, I heard your earlier report talking about I'm not going to tell people how to live their lives. He's very selective on that. One of the things we haven't had at all is a frontline politician talking about fertility rates. Now we have one, which is who is the Prime Minister. And what has he got to say on the subject? I'm not going to tell anyone what to do. So we're actually retreating from the idea that a government can have any kind of pronatal policy.
Isn't government policy, with all its green targets and so on, very Malthusian? It thinks we're running out of resources and therefore it'd be better if there were fewer of us, and that people are picking up that message, and that the tax system, the benefit system, militates against having children. You are worse off for every child that you have.
I think the fiscal and benefit system, you're right. I think the green wokery is a problem, but as long as we consume the labour of others, if we're not going to have our own children, but we say we want the bus driver, we want the receptionist in the doctor's surgery, if we want to consume labour, we don't produce it, what do? We draw in labour from very low emissions countries. Someone coming from Syria to Germany, or from India to Britain, or from Latin America to the United States, their emissions might grow 50 times. Now, it's very nice for them, they're leading a much better life, but it is not green to have smaller families, consume the labour of others, and to suck into your economy people from low emissions countries to high emissions countries.
So how do you encourage people domestically to have more children? What would be the policy prescriptions you would suggest?
Well, there are a whole range of things you can do. I mean, firstly, there clearly are fiscal and benefit things you can do. You can change tax rates, you can give tax breaks, as many countries do. Indeed, in France, this isn't an extreme right or extreme left thing. Countries like France, many countries give tax breaks to people. You can help people with childcare and housing and so on. All of those can help But I think the critical thing is to change the culture, to change the world in which we just assume we go to university and then we get a job and then we do this, that and the other. And sometime in our 30s we think of having children. If we could change the way that people lead their lives, to have their children earlier, to get their education not necessarily in one lump up front. If we could actually recognise as a country that this is an issue, if we could have politicians talking about it, I think that would start to move the dial.
Well, you're starting the process and I'm trying to help you. So thank you very much, Paul. Up next, it's Bev Turner in for Patrick Christie's. I'll be back tomorrow at 8 o'clock. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg. This has been State of the Nation, and you're waiting with bated breath for the weather forecast in Somerset. And I can tell you, the sun will be shining. As always, it'll be perfect, beautiful weather in Somerset.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome along to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Staying fine for most of us during the next 24 hours, but it will be chilly overnight, and again we'll see some frost and fog form under this area of high pressure. The high this time contains clearer skies compared with last week's high pressure, which was predominantly gloomy. That means, of course, temperatures will fall away overnight quite quickly. So frost and fog pockets forming, especially across parts of Wales, the Midlands, Northern England, Northern Ireland. At either side of that, we're going to see cloud in the south and the far northwest, tending to keep things mild, and it will be a drizzly start to the day for northwest Scotland, and there'll be showers around first thing for parts of Kent as well, 1 or 2 showers running along the south coast. With the cloud in the south, a milder start to the day, but for Wales, the Midlands, Northern England, parts of Northern Ireland, some dense pockets of fog about, likewise for central and southern Scotland. But further north into northwest Scotland, well, it's going to be a milder start to the day because of the cloud and those outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle. The light rain pushing into parts of Northern Ireland through the morning as well, and this area of cloud in the far northwest will tend to sink southwards slowly, and it will also turn cloudier through parts of Northern England, the Midlands and North Wales. Brighter skies to the south and southeast, a drier day to come for southeast England, and feeling pleasant enough, 11 to 12 Celsius. But into Thursday, we're going to see a cloudier start to the day. Still some pockets of fog about, not as much as previous mornings, however. And it's going to be a mainly cloudy day, I think, with some light showers affecting northwestern parts. Into Friday, a change is on the way, but it takes a good 24 to 36 hours to make its way across the country. That change to much colder weather through the weekend.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's only 2 weeks remaining to win Christmas on Us this year. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2 or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday